Wits End: How Restructuring Our Meritocracy Will Strengthen Social Networks, Respect Dignity, and Increase Social Mobility, by Gina Ravello Sapero. In the 19th century, Germany sought to improve its lumber industry through scientific quantification. They redefined the forest by calling trees timber, and anything that was not a tree was called underbrush. Using a rationalist approach, they cleared away all the underbrush and replanted trees in rows. In the end, their rationalist approach failed them. They were unable to realize early on that what they had deemed counterproductive to their lumber industry was actually necessary to the growth process. Similarly, the U.S. higher education system now primarily values cognitive skills, like IQ, above the underbrush of non-cognitive skills, such as resilience or creativity. The switch to the rationalist approach in creating equal access to prestigious higher education began in the 1930s, as Ivy University presidents started to require students to take the SAT. The idea was that admittance should be based on a student's intelligence, a trait evenly distributed across individuals regardless of class. Despite this honest attempt, the emphasis on the merit of intellect seems not to have had major impact on the class demographics of those attending these top schools. For example, according to a study completed by Opportunity Insights published in 2017, at 38 colleges in America, including 5 in the Ivy League, Dartmouth, Princeton, Yale, Penn, and Brown, more students came from the top 1% of the income scale than from the entire bottom 60%. Clearly, something is not working. This system fails to provide substantial access for those in poverty to achieve the American dream. If we applied Rawls's veil of ignorance, would we not want a feasible reality in which we would have the best of life and become the number one of society? Not only does the current meritocracy keep those in poverty from becoming the richest in society, but it also devalues the dignity of the education and careers of those who don't attend these elite institutions. The U.S. higher education system's overemphasis on cognitive skills and intellectual meritocracy has perpetuated social inequalities, but restructuring this approach to value non-cognitive skills, strengthen social networks, and respect the dignity of all forms of labor can create a more inclusive system that enhances social mobility. In David Brooks's article, How the Ivy League Destroyed America, he argues that the meritocracy is failing most Americans because it perpetuates inequality rather than dismantling it. For instance, in 2024, Nature published a study in which they found that across 30 different achievement groups ranging from CEOs, authors, artists, and scholars totaling 26,198 people, these high achievers displayed a pattern of attendance to an elite 34 schools, including the 8 Ivies. It stands to reason that the highest achievers in society are going to the most prestigious schools in the country. The problem, however, arises when we look deeper at the hiring practices of elite businesses, publishing houses, and research institutions. In the book Pedigree, How Elite Students Get Elite Jobs, sociologist Lauren Rivera found that recruiters at elite firms typically identify 3 to 5 core universities where they will do most of their recruiting. Then they identify 5 to 15 additional schools from which they will more passively accept applications, with no resumes being read from other schools. Essentially, if the school a person attended is not prestigious enough, regardless of their merit or the reason they chose to attend a different institution, they are automatically disqualified from these upper echelon career paths. The system, intended to reward talent and effort regardless of class, instead reinforces privilege. Elite institutions like Ivy League schools are disproportionately more accessible to wealthy students, creating a self-perpetuating cycle where the already advantaged maintain their dominance. Raj Shetty's study, Mobility Report Cards, The Role of Colleges in Intergenerational Mobility, found that children whose parents are in the top 1% of the income distribution are 77 times more likely to attend an Ivy League college than those whose parents are in the bottom income quintile. Not only does attendance at these schools seem to be working on a precedent of high income, but even the tests meant to consider intelligence objectively favor students with higher income backgrounds. The 2024 SAT Suite of Assessments annual report recorded that 10% of test takers were students in the lowest quintile of family income take the assessment with a mean score of 887, while 25% of test takers were from the highest quintile and had a mean score of 1,152. This data suggests that the highest income students are taking the test at more than double the rate of those with the lowest income background and are outscoring them by 265 points on average. If IQ is evenly distributed among a population, then it seems that higher income students have access to resources that are better preparing them for these tests, in turn giving them higher educational opportunities and even better career opportunities. The argument can be made that the reason the students from wealthier families are doing better on the SAT is that ex-Harvard president James Conant's goals came to fruition. The smartest people are the most financially stable and are genetically passing down their intelligence to their children. While this could be a possibility, this does not negate the fact that even though elite universities expanded and restructured their admittance process through the work of Conant and other leaders like him, the majority of admitted students still came from wealthy families. The truth remains that students from impoverished families are experiencing disproportionately fewer opportunities in a meritocracy that is supposed to even out the playing field through skills that can't be bought. Outside of the financial and education gaps reinforced by attending these top schools, they also socially drive the poor from the wealthy. A study conducted by the American Enterprise Institute found that college graduates report having more third spaces, shared community spaces, to interact with other people. On a personal/relational level, in 2024, 24% of Americans without a college degree report having no close friends compared to 10% of college graduates. This implies that educational disparities reinforce not just economic inequalities, but also social and relational divides that contribute to the cycle of poverty. The lack of third places and the higher rates of social isolation among those without a college degree have several critical implications. According to a study published by Mario Small, community spaces are particularly important for those in poverty because they provide emotional support, information, services, and material goods, generalized exchange, a sense of belonging, and access to other organizations. This absence of shared community spaces, and close relationships limits access to social networks that are often crucial for job opportunities, mentorship, and emotional support. This further marginalizes individuals from upward mobility and entrenches poverty. The lack of social capital contributes to weaker national community cohesion by deepening the divide between the rich and poor, especially politically. When individuals from different socioeconomic backgrounds do not interact, it fosters misunderstanding and resentment. Essentially, when income level is the most important division in society, politics is a struggle over how to redistribute money. When society is more divided by education, politics becomes a war over values and culture. This divide is further exacerbated when the rich attribute their success solely to intelligence or merit, reinforcing the notion of superiority and dismantling empathy for the structural barriers faced by others. Over time, this dynamic fuels disdain toward the wealthy and perpetuates a cycle of mistrust, undermining efforts to build a unified, equitable society. Through this, the focus on the value of intelligence above all else alienates many Americans, undermines social cohesion, and creates a cultural divide between the elite and the broader population. If the meritocracy places too much value on hard skills like IQ, how do we create an educational system that hones soft skills like grit, creativity, and the ability to work in groups? Restructuring our meritocracy requires a shift from standardized measurements of success, such as test scores and grades, to a more holistic understanding of human potential. Some researchers, like Robert Rector, argue, like the German rationalists, that those in poverty could spend their resources on better preparing their children for the SAT like the wealthy, instead of spending their money on luxuries like TV and through that get an equal footing. The real issue is that a focus on hard skills like IQ overlooks the complex, multifaceted nature of human potential. To move toward a more equitable model, we need to value traits like motivation, generosity, sensitivity, and passion alongside traditional markers of intelligence. Project-based learning, where students work together on interdisciplinary projects, provides an example of how education can nurture these qualities as compared to models that are geared towards the current elite education model. By shifting away from rigid assessments like the SAT and embracing portfolio based evaluations, we can better understand the diverse talents students bring to the table. In this model, students present their best work and reflect on their personal growth, demonstrating skills that cannot be measured by traditional tests. Moreover, moving away from a one size fits all approach allows us to tailor education and career opportunities to individuals, considering what they are truly great at rather than how they compare to others. Ultimately, by focusing on the individual rather than a narrow set of metrics, we can create a meritocracy that is both more inclusive and effective. Finally, there needs to be reforms as far as social networks and cross class connections. One of the most interesting ways to do this, as David Brooks proposes, is to use national service. He claims making national service a rite of passage after high school might also help shift how status gets allocated among various job categories, placing young Americans on an equal level through a shared experience across many shared cultures, education, and income levels can help foster connections that would otherwise not be created in the current meritocracy. Only about 66% of Americans with and without a college degree feel as though they have someone. They can rely for they can rely on someone for something as simple as giving them a ride. Something like mandatory military service, although likely unfeasible in America, can foster a culture of cross class and educational trust, making Americans feel more connected to one another. Another, likely more practical way this can be realized is through local civic groups. Research highlights the critical role of social connections built in childhood neighborhoods, which serve as third places, where individuals first develop the skills and habits needed for social connections. For example, one study took the experiences of 16 women tracking if their neighborhood had a third space for them in childhood, and if their current neighborhood serves as a third space. They found that the majority of women who reported building skills in vulnerability, warmth, and rootedness with their third spaces and relationships in childhood were able to carry it over into adulthood. These childhood neighborhood based plays and chance encounters create a foundation for forming relationships that carry into adulthood, fostering the nearness necessary for social well being. However, for individuals who lack this formative experience, adulthood becomes constrained by the absence of such networks, leading to diminished social well being. Understanding this dynamic is critical in the study of poverty because social networks build a soft skill and community. These can serve as pathways out of economic hardship, providing access to job opportunities, mentorship, and emotional support. By addressing the social isolation that frequently accompanies poverty and lack of higher education, we can create interventions that not only build economic security but also foster the relational ties necessary for long term resilience and upward mobility through different pathways. Through the creation of these stronger social networks across classes and to strengthen communities, society can learn to place higher merit in other job paths that do not necessarily involve elite higher education. A possible way to aid this would be to support economic policies like the CHIPS and Science Act, which boost the domestic manufacturing of semiconductors. Policies like this not only create high skilled, well paying jobs, but also emphasize the value of hard skills, creativity, and innovation in traditionally overlooked industries. This shift can help dismantle the hierarchy that places excessive emphasis on IQ and elite credentials, fostering a system that values diverse contributions. Restructuring the meritocracy to include both hard and soft skills would provide opportunities for individuals across socioeconomic backgrounds to access meaningful work and dignity. Some may argue that this will never close the radical wealth inequality gap or be a permanent solution to poverty. It might not be a permanent solution, but it is a start. In the 2024 UN World Happiness Report, the results determined that Finland was the happiest country. It's not because they don't have a wealth gap. In fact, the richest 10% own half the country's net worth. Rather, they report the highest combination of life expectancy, social support, freedom, generosity, and institutional trust. When society values a combination of skills and fosters community connections, it breaks down the barriers that perpetuate economic inequality and ensures everyone has the dignity to contribute to the economy in ways that match their strengths. By broadening the definition of merit, we move toward a more equitable system that empowers all individuals to succeed. To address systemic inequality in education and employment, we must redefine merit and restructure what Joseph Fishkin calls the opportunity structure. The opportunity structure refers to the intersecting lattice of paths and hurdles that propel people toward one profession or one way of life and away from others. In the U.S., the structure is currently unitary, funneling people through a narrow path of academic success, standardized tests, and elite credentials to achieve economic and social success. This system excludes many, perpetuating privilege and restricting the ability of individuals from less advantaged backgrounds to succeed. In reimagining the opportunity structure, we can draw on Amartya Sen's capabilities approach, which emphasizes expanding individuals' freedoms to achieve well being and pursue what they value in life. Sen argues that development should be measured by the substantive freedoms people have, rather than by narrow metrics like income or test scores. Similarly, a restructured opportunity structure would prioritize providing diverse and meaningful pathways that allow individuals to cultivate and use their unique talents and capabilities. For instance, expanding vocational education, fostering cross class social networks, and valuing soft skills like resilience and creativity would enable individuals to realize their potential across varied domains, not just those tied to traditional academic achievement. This alignment with the capabilities approach also underscores the importance of systemic support, such as equitable access to resources, mentorship, and community networks. By creating multiple pathways to success, what Fishkin terms opportunity pluralism, we empower individuals to choose from a wider range of life options, enhancing autonomy and agency. Such a shift would not only improve social mobility, but also foster a society where success is more equitably distributed. Cultural cohesion is strengthened, and economic contributions reflect the diverse strengths of all members.